Chapter 1, from the Sacred Scrolls. And those that had not boarded the galleon sealed and left the tomb of Athena. For the Lord Architect, who was Xanthi, had come to them, and he had told them to leave the tomb, for it was unsafe. And on that day, the people learned how Zeus had cheated Xanthi. For it was Xanthi, not Zeus, who had shaped the city of the gods, and the people believed him, for he was a kind soul. And on that day, Xanthi led them to a second great ship, the frigate, unknown even to Zeus. For Xanthi refused to leave any behind. And Zeus became enraged, for many had been sacrificed to send the first great ship to the stars. And he stripped Xanthi of his immortality and powers, greatly wounding him. But the Lord Architect recovered and led the people into the great ship. And they took with them the arrow of Apollo, the instructions to open the tomb, and a warning from Zeus. For Zeus told them that any return to Kabul would bear a price in blood. And the great ship left Kabul, and they followed the trail of the galleon for many years. And many died during the journey. And Zeus took pity on them, for he could no longer watch the suffering of the people, and he restored Xanthi's immortality. And Xanthi led the people to 12 colonies of man, and he was rewarded, for he was allowed to rejoin the lords of Kabul. And all rejoiced, for they had reached the promised land, and Xanthi left with gods. Chapter 2, A Battlestar is Born. Battlestar Xanthi Cylon War, Day 1107. Click, a spark forms in the dark, there is a pause, and then a reaction follows. Slowly, the reaction spreads and power begins to flow. The systems come online, and in the engineering room, a man in a spacesuit smiles. His name is Marcus McAllister, and for what feels like forever, he had been overseeing the construction on this mammoth vessel. Now, it is no longer on power from the Scorpia fleet yards. It is slowly beginning to create its own heartbeat. Click, click, click. McAllister started another reactor. Click, 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 and another. As McAllister walked around, the power begins to radiate it outwards. First, the heating elements begin to work, then comes the gravity, and finally the O2 scrubbers and air vents. The Battlestar Xanthi was coming to life. A smile formed on McAllister's face. Hello, sweetie. McAllister activated his wireless. McAllister, to power up Team 1, you are cleared to board. /back/equals Wilco, boarding now. /back/equals. McAllister walked to another console and throws a last series of switches. A light blinked on, followed by another, and another, another. Finally, the reactor room is fully lit. Like the power, the light begins to spread outwards. McAllister took off his helmet and breathed in the air. It was fresh and warm. Better, much better. He put down his helmet. Time to go. He made his way to CIC. As he walked out, 3 engineers walked in. He gave them a polite nod as he passed them. When he got there, 4 engineers were powering up systems. Mike, how are we doing? The oldest of the 4 engineers looked up. We're on schedule, Colonel. He took out a computer chip. Would you like to do the honors? Thank you, Chief. McAllister grabbed the chip. Let's do this. He walked to the FTL console and put the lit in open position. McAllister took a deep breath, then opened a small access panel. The screws were not in place yet. Behind it was an incomplete circuit. He inserted the chip into a slot, and there was a click. The FTL console came to life. He put the panel back in place, then put the screws in place. He entered his clearance code and hit enter. There was a beep, and then the FTL clock appeared on the screen. The drive was cold, which meant the clock said 20 minutes. Alas, it would not be McAllister who would order this Battlestar's first jump. That would be her first commander's job. He took a deep breath and headed out of the CIC. It was up to his team now. As he made his way towards Airlock 1, his mind wandered. He remembered the installation of the lights, the welding of the bulkheads, the testing of the PA, and so much more. And now he had to hand it over to somebody else. He reached the airlock. People were going to and fro. Power-Up Team had 300 hands. Commander Peter Magnus was waiting there for him. Colonel, Commander, McAllister reached into his pocket, pulling out a small item. So I guess this is it. She's all yours now. He looked back across the airlock. You know, I had my doubts this ship would ever get finished, and now that she is, it's like a dream. He held up the item. It was a 1-qubit coin. This was my lucky charm throughout the construction process. It's yours now. Magnus accepted the coin from McAllister. Thank you. Good luck, sir. The two men shook hands. McAllister walked away while Magnus boarded his new ship. He noticed that one of the men from the power-up team had followed the exchange. Something on your mind, crewman? Nothing serious, sir. It's just a silly question that just popped into my mind. Let's hear it. Do Battlestar's dream? Let's find out. Carry on. The crewman went back to work while Magnus walked deeper into the ship. As he did, he played with the coin. The man's question rang in his ears. Do Battlestar's dream? And what kind of dream would it be, a good one or a nightmare? Alas, there was only one way to find out. He pocketed the coin and went to work. Chapter 3, A Trip to Hades and Misery. Battlestar Xanthi Day, 1505. The gas of the northern gas cloud was warm, colorful and warm. The colors were only noticeable to those on the observation deck. They could see a spectacle of blue-green and purple gas pass by as the Xanthi pushed her way deeper inside. But warmth was clear to all. It moved through the ship in waves. They began at the outer hull, then headed deeper into the ship, before exiting through the sublight drives. To keep the warmth, or better put, heat from becoming too much for the crew, Commander Magnus had ordered the ship's own heating units to be disengaged, and it was still hot as hell. The commander looked at the Dratty's screen, searching for salvation. The reason they were in the nebula was a brand new supply station called Ammo Station 12. When brought online, it would be a key facility to the defense of Sector 38. But it could not be brought online until its crew was aboard, and the Xanthi was carrying that crew. Now approaching the Hades asteroid field, sir, the ship's navigation specialist said. About time, Magnus muttered. Very well. Captain, you know what to do? Yes, sir. Beginning preparations for parallel course now, sir. Magnus picked up the intercom horn. He held it upside down as he spoke into it. All hands, this is the commander. Re-engage the heating units. He looked up to see that somebody had brought up the countdown clock. 6 minutes until we reach the Hades asteroid field, and counting down. He signed off and put the horn down. On the far edge of the Dratty's screen, the first rocks of the Hades asteroid field appeared. This field was home to Ammo Station 12. It orbited one of the bigger rocks. The field was a collection of debris that orbited a star called Misery. Whoever charted this cloud had a very sick sense of humor. Magnus muttered. Sir, a nearby junior officer asked, a field called Hades orbiting a star called Misery. Yes, sir, the officer said. I see what you mean, sir. Magnus went back to studying the Dratty's display. The field was becoming more dense, and the shadows of the rocks were causing the temperature to drop. The commander went to the engineering station to check on the heating units. They had all been re-engaged. Internal temperature is at 20 degrees and is holding steady, Commander. The ensign behind the station said. Well done, Mr. Jonas. Yes, sir. What about the hull temperature? It's highly unstable, sir, Jonas began. One section is scorching hot, while another is ice cold and a third is room temperature. I recommend we get her into the field as soon as possible. Noted. He made his way back to the command station, where the navigation specialist was waiting for him. Report, Captain Miller. The turn calculations are ready, sir. We can go parallel with the field at any time now. Excellent. He looked at the Dratty's display. They were down to 3 minutes. Take you station, Captain. Yes, sir. Miller took his station. Magnus let them close to 30, then ordered the turn. Miller and his aides executed the turn perfectly. Then Jonas reported the hull temperature was now stable. They were in the shadows of Hades, while misery made the world around them boil. Battlestar Xanthi Commander's Quarters Day, 1506, 0800. Magnus sat behind his desk. The morning reports were waiting for him. He began with a status report from the engine room. They reported that Xanthi had suffered a little wear and tear during the passage, but nothing that couldn't be fixed before the end of the first shift. Next came a battle report from the Galactica. She and the Columbia had intercepted 2 Cylon base stars. One had been destroyed, while the other had been damaged and forced to jump away. Both Battlestars had launched Raptors to search for the wounded vessel. Finally, there was a message from Fleet HQ. They wanted all commanders to begin surveys for possible locations for Ammo Station 13. All in all, these were not the worst morning reports he had ever received, but the day was far from over yet. There was still the mid-watch report and the evening reports. He had barely completed the thought when the voice of Lieutenant Colonel Denise Mitchell's Xanthi's XO came over the intercom. Action stations, set condition 1 throughout the ship. Magnus grabbed the horn of his intercom unit. Commanding officer to CIC report, XO here, we have a base star at the very edge of Dratty's range, sir. Have they launched their raiders yet? No, sir, they apparently haven't seen us yet. I'll be right up. He put the horn down and ran out of the room. It didn't take him long to reach CIC. When he got there, Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell was coordinating preparations for the attack. He quickly made his way to the command station. Report. We're putting Vipers in all the tubes now. The Raptors are being prepared in the starboard flight pods, sir, she said. Time to the first wave. Launch in 15 seconds, sir. Status of the base star. Closing, sir, Miller said. 12 seconds until we enter their Dratty's range, sir. Magnus nodded and looked around. There was an electrical tension in the air. Xanthi had gone toe-to-toe with a base star before, but never by herself. This was her first one-on-one engagement. Now entering enemy Dratty's range, sir. First wave of Vipers away, now preparing the second, Commander, Mitchell said. Raiders. Launching now, Miller said. 40 contacts and more on the way, sir. Second wave of Vipers is away. The Cylons have launched all their raiders. I'm counting 85 contacts, sir. A base star that size should carry 200 raiders, Mitchell said. Where are the rest? We'll worry about that later, Magnus said. Time to contact. 20 seconds, Miller said. 10, 5, Magnus reached into his pocket and felt the 1-qubit coin McAllister had given him. The Battle of Hades and Misery had begun. Chapter 4, The Battle of Hades and Misery. Captain Teresa Layton always felt a thrill when her Viper cleared the launch tube and hit open space. But this time, things were different. To begin with, the space beyond was not entirely open. Added to that was her rank. She had only been made captain and squadron leader 2 days ago. And then, there was the fact that they were the first wave in Xanthi's first one-on-one brawl. All of this accumulated in a tingling sensation in her fingers. She looked around and saw that all 11 of her squadmates were with her. It made her feel a lot better. Then the first toaster flew into Dratty's range. She activated the wireless. Okay, boys and girls, Formation Delta 1. She took the safeties off her guns. Weapons free, we've got work to do. As she got acknowledgments from the others, the sensation in her fingers ebbed away. Then they entered weapons range, and all hell broke loose. Battlestar Xanthi Sick Day 1506, 0802. Magnus played with the 1-qubit coin as he watched the Vipers engage the raiders. At the same time, he was keenly aware of the closing base star. He gave Mitchell a look, but he didn't need to give any orders. She was already getting the weapons ready. Third wave of Vipers going in now, sir. Miller said. Time to base star contact, Magnus said. 17 seconds, Commander, Mitchell said. All weapons ready. He looked at the Dratty's display but saw the situation in his mind. Xanthi in the shadows, the base star in the heat, and the Vipers fighting the raiders in between. He turned to the helm station. Helm, change course to 205 Karam 82. Rotate her 20 degrees on her y-axis. Yes, sir. Changing course now. Rotation in 10 seconds, 5, and now. Xanthi turned and rolled. She was now ideally positioned, with her main guns at a 30-degree angle towards their target. Then the base star opened up with everything she had. "Incoming," Miller said. "Artillery and 4 nukes, sir. Focus on shooting down the nukes. We can take the artillery." "Yes, sir," came several replies. The Xanthi opened up with everything she had and took down 3 of the incoming nukes. But the last one hit and exploded. 8 of their Vipers had been blasted to pieces by the Cylon opening salvo. The survivors had let rip, but it was not enough. So now they were playing cat and mouse between the rocks of the Hades asteroid field. At the moment, Captain Layton was dodging 2 raiders. Come on, Teresa, think. She took a sharp starboard turn, barely dodging a salvo from the toasters. A huge rock appeared ahead and she moved around it. One of the raiders went around it to starboard, while the other went to port. They barely avoided hitting one another. Layton saw her chance and did a 180. She fired a burst and both raiders went up. But now she was flying backwards, so she didn't see the next rock, the one that was heading straight for her. The ship had rattled under the impact, but the armor had kept out the bulk of the radiation. What had gotten through had ended up in the dry bulk storage, spoiling a large portion of the ship's food supply. But that was a problem for later. For now, Magnus had to focus on getting the Xanthi through this battle. He turned to Mitchell. "Status of the Raptors?" "The first wave is heading out now, sir," Mitchell began. "We're also preparing another wave of Vipers." "Good, but it's time to hit them with something harder." "Release nuclear weapons is now authorized. Weapons officer, prep launch tubes 1 through 6. "Yes, sir," said Mitchell and the weapons officer. The weapons officer, Lieutenant Andrea DeSalle, gave the prep orders, and soon the tubes were loaded. In the meanwhile, the Vipers and Raptors had launched. Missiles loaded in tubes 1 through 6. DeSalle said, "Tell the birds to get clear, then open the doors." "Opening the doors, sir." "Load target packet. Entering targeting solution for the base star." "Loading target packet." "Entering targeting solution for the base star." "Packet loaded, sir." Before Magnus could give the next order, something really bad happened. A second base star jumped in. Now things were really going to get ugly. Layton was still moving backwards. There was no sign of any raiders, but she knew that they were out there. Then the rock appeared. "Frack!" she yelled as she pulled the stick to the left. "Blood rock pile." Her Viper barely cleared the rock, and the move pushed her deep into her chair, courtesy of heavy G-forces. As soon as she was past, she turned her Viper around. 2 seconds after she did, an energy discharged barely missed her bird. Crap, a firecracker. She took a couple of deep breaths to slow down her racing heart. Of course, that's it. A smile formed on her face. She had a plan to nail these bastards. The second base star also opened up with everything she had. Magnus knew Xanthi couldn't defeat 2 base stars, so they had to get out of here and do so now. Time to speed this up. He turned to DeSalle. "You know what to do, Lieutenant?" "Aye, Commander. Warhead and launch safeties disabled." Next, Magnus and Mitchell quickly keyed in their command codes. DeSalle then quickly got the launch key. Mitchell put it in the proper slot. "Release nuclear weapons is now authorized. Fire tubes 1 through 6. Mitchell turned the key, and 5 seconds later, all 6 nukes launched. Magnus turned to the helm station. He had no intention of waiting to see what happened with the nukes. "Take her to course 182 Karam 28. "Yes, sir," the helmsman said. "Course 182 Karam 28. Xanthi turned to the new course, which put the field between her and the base stars. But Magnus knew it only bought them time. Now all he needed was a plan to kill the base stars. Layton's plan was based on physics. Most of the northern gas cloud was warm and the gas flowed fast. But in the shadows of Hades, the gas was much colder and flowed much slower. The friction between the gas flows created a natural electromagnetic field. Battlestars, Raptors, and Vipers had limited EM protection and avoided unnecessary passages through the field. But the asteroids didn't have any control of their course. They weaved through the EM field at random, and sometimes one became charged. These rocks were nicknamed firecrackers. And when a ship got to close, they discharged. So Layton figured all she had to do was get the toasters to get to close. She opened a wireless channel and said a prayer to the lords of Kabul. "Leighton, to all Vipers, rally to me," she said. She looked at the Dratty's display. It was empty, but she refused to give up, so she repeated her call. And this time she got an answer. It came in the form of 4 dots on her Dratty's display. 2 Vipers were chasing 2 Cylon raiders. She set an intercept course and soon spotted the raiders. "Come on, you bastards." Then she entered weapons range and opened up on the nearest raider. It exploded. The other 2 Vipers targeted the other one and cut it to pieces. "Taptance to Ladykiller," one of the Viper pilots said. "Me and Walker are ready to go, Captain. So what's the plan?" "One thing at a time, Taptance. First, we need to bust out a couple more birds." "Right, boss." The 3 Vipers turned and went to find new targets. Magnus tapped the 1-qubit coin on the navigation table. He looked at the Dratty's display and studied the 2 base star signatures, and then he realized something. Galactica's report. "Sir," Mitchell said, "is something wrong? I know why the first base star only had 85 raiders." Galactica and Columbia recently damaged another base star, forcing it to jump away. "Of course," Mitchell said. "A repair star, sir," one of the junior officers said. "What's a repair star?" "Something the Admiralty thinks is a myth. The entire lower disk is a repair facility designed to fix other base stars." He paused. "Destroying one of those is equal to destroying 20 normal base stars. But how are we going to do that?" That was the 1 million credit question, but Magnus knew where to begin. The lower half of the repair star had to include a large Tilium tank for refueling a damaged base star and its raiders. If they could detonate that, it would take a considerable chunk of the enemy with it. Then, they would hit it with all the firepower they could muster. The problem was how to detonate the tank. While the rocks blocked the Cylons' weapons fire, they also blocked their wireless signals. And that meant they couldn't reach their birds, so it was time for some creative thinking. They had managed to liberate 8 more Vipers and 2 Raptors. The others were either destroyed or still playing cat-and-mouse in the field, only now they were being chased by larger numbers of raiders. So Leighton knew this was all she was going to get. "Okay, let's get this show on the road." She activated the wireless. "Formation Omega-3. Baker, Walker, and Tiger break away and head deeper into the field. Distract the toasters." "You got it, boss," Tiger said. The 3 Vipers broke away and dove into the field. Then the remaining ships formed 2 diamond formations, each with a Raptor in the middle. "Okay, boys and girls. Set course 130 Karam 12. The small fleet turned to the new course. There was a large rock ahead of them. Once close enough, they opened up with all their weapons. The rock shattered. But one part survived, the core, which was solid iron. This was the key to firecrackers, as such cores were highly sensitive to EM fields. Of course, Leighton had not known if this rock had come with an iron core. But the bigger the rock, the bigger the chance it had of having one. So she picked the biggest one in range, and it had paid off. Sometimes, there's no substitute for plain, dumb luck. Next, they took up positions on one side of the asteroid, then they fired thrusters to maintain their position, and then came the hard part. Okay, time to start pushing. Engage engines. There were acknowledgements, and then the small fleet engaged their engines, while using the thrusters to keep the proper distance. Slowly, the core began to move. They continued to push, and soon the core was moving fast. Then it hit the EM field. It had the desired effect. The core was charged like a battery. And then came the really hard part. They had to push the core back the other way without getting fried. Luckily, the 2 Raptors were armed with missiles. She gave the proper orders and the Raptors broke formation. They armed a couple of their missiles and fired them in a precise pattern. It also had the desired effect. The core slowly began to tumble in the other direction. As it picked up speed, she began planning the next phase of her attack. Lieutenant Dan McIvers ran as fast as his legs could carry him. His destination was the starboard flight pod, where his bird was being prepared for a desperate mission. He looked back to make sure his co-pilot Ensign Tyler Williams was still following. The man was still there. Finally, the 2 of them reached the pod and made their way inside. For the record, Williams began, you know this is a suicide mission. I know our chances of making it back are microscopic. Even if we survive until delivery, well, things will get nastier soon after that. But we're still going anyway, aren't we, sir? You don't have to come with me, McIver said. Hell, I can order you to stay. Dan, I knew it might come to this when I joined the fleet, sir. I'm going to see this through, sir. Good, because I'm going to need all the help I can get. They reached their bird, but it was not a Viper or a Raptor. What people often forgot was that, beyond their combat wings, Battlestars also carried shuttles. Xanthi had 4 of them. McIvers and Williams were the crew for Xanthi 1. They approached their bird and went inside. There, a group of deck hands was making rushed modifications to the passenger section. McIvers turned to the ranking deckhand. How are we doing, Chief? 2 Mark III nukes ready to go, but we need to set the timers. How long? 5 minutes. That's the longest we can set on this model. I'll take it. He gave the chief a nod, last chance to bail out Tyler. No way. The deckhands quickly finished their work. They connected the timers to the pilot's console, where they had set up an activation switch. The chief gave them their last instructions, then they were left alone. They quickly put on their helmets and took their seats. 2 minutes later, they were ready to go. McIvers activated the wireless. Xanthi 1 to CIC, we're ready to launch. Xanthi 1, this is Xanthi Actual. You are cleared for departure. May the Lords of Cabal be with you. Thank you, Actual. Xanthi 1 out. William fired the thrusters, and they lifted off the deck. Then McIvers opened the main engines all the way, and they were gone. Things were going to hell in a handbasket. They were now dealing with 2 base stars, and the fighters had been decimated. Leighton knew the first because she could see the 2 base stars at the edge of Draddy's range. The second, she could see with her own eyes. Of the 180 Vipers they had begun with, only 48 remained, and the Raptors had gone from 60 to 11. But the enemy had suffered losses as well. They were down to 57 Raiders, and most of those came from the 2nd base star. At the moment, the survivors of both sides were gathering. Looks like we're about to have an old-fashioned showdown, boss. Tapdent said. I know, just keep close to the rock. The colonials were sticking close to the charged iron core. It was providing them with temporal cover from the toasters, but it wouldn't last, which was where the hard part came, to draw the toasters in close enough to fry them. The Cylons were many things, but stupid was not one of them. By now, they had figured out the core was charged. And if they hadn't, they would so soon, which meant they wouldn't go near the core. Instead, they would simply blow it up. So she would have to come up with a plan to draw them in. She took a couple of deep breaths and an idea formed in her head. It wasn't pretty, but it was all they had. She activated her wireless and began giving orders. McIvers pushed the engines to the limit. He knew that Xanthi couldn't dodge those 2 base stars forever. Worse, one of the 2 base stars was in fact moving around the field. It would soon drive the Xanthi towards its companion. Once caught between the 2 base stars, the Battlestar wouldn't stand a chance. Added to that, the moving base star would soon be able to put down heavy fire towards their Vipers and Raptors. Have they spotted us? McIvers said. No, we're still hugging the field to close for that. Good, but we can only do that for another minute. Okay, now would be a good time for a plan, boss. I'm working on it, but let's start by putting the autopilot on program Alpha. Right. Alpha program meant the computer would fly the ship in a straight line on the course it was on. Okay, the autopilot is programmed. Next move? Shut down everything we don't need. Williams nodded and began flipping switches. The shuttle was soon cold and dark. Then they reached the breakaway point. McIvers took a deep breath and then put the stick as far to the left as possible. The shuttle bolted towards the target base star. There had been a lot of crazy plans during the course of the war, but Leighton was that her plan, if anybody survived, it would go down as the craziest one ever. She took a deep breath. Okay, folks, here we go, she said into her wireless. All Raptors fire. They had only a handful of missiles left. The Raptors let theirs fly, eliminating 3 Raiders and starting the Cylon assault. Vipers, fire your missiles. The Vipers fired their missiles, and 3 more raiders were shot to pieces. Now came the crazy part. Everybody to the core. All the birds turned and headed for the core at top speed. The Cylons, however, didn't follow. As Leighton had expected, they had detected the charge. The colonials continued to close on the core until they were only 5 meters outside the danger zone. There, they came to a dead stop. "Everybody ready?" She got acknowledgments from everybody. Then she said a quick prayer and gave the order. Once that was done, she hit the master buttons and her Viper went almost completely dark. Only the thrusters were still working. She fired them and moved her Viper 6 meters ahead. And then she held her position and let go of her stick. "Come on." She took a couple of deep breaths. "Please don't blow up in my face." The charge in the core was massive and could fry a lone Raptor or Viper with ease, but they had 52 birds, which meant they could handle a much bigger jolt. And then it came. A massive bolt jumped from the core. They were approaching their target on the most direct course possible, but it still felt like it took forever to get there. The Dratty's console beeped twice. They both knew what it meant. "Incoming," Williams said. "I'm reading 4 missiles, boss. Drop swallows." Williams dropped 6 swallows and activated the warhead jammers. They had 2 of them. McIvers took the shuttle into a wild starboard turn. 3 of the missiles hit the swallows, but the last one kept coming. "Time to do some fancy flying, boss. Distance. 20,000 clicks and closing." Williams fired 4 more swallows. They all missed. 15,000 and still closing. "I need more power to the jammers, sir." "We can't spare it. Tighten the beam to minimal." "Right." He changed the settings. 10,098,765. McIvers threw the shuttle into 2 more turns, but the missile kept going. Williams readied the last 2 swallows while he also kept working on the jammers. The missile closed further. 432, he hit the proper frequency. "Gotcha," and detonate. The warhead exploded 900 meters from the Xanthi one. There was a bright flash, and then a great shockwave swatted the shuttle. It began to tumble. Leighton prayed harder than she had ever prayed before. The electrical charge was being conducted through her ship, but it wasn't doing any damage. For while such a jolt was a danger to a powered Viper, all the systems would melt. It was none to a powered-down unit. With all the systems off, it was simply a Faradius gauge, and because she was not holding the stick, she was isolated for the charge, because her uniform was non-conductive. "Come on, jump already." And then it happened. The charge jumped out of her Viper. And it didn't just happen to her Viper, but to all the others and the Raptors as well. "Come on, you bastards, Fry." With no other place to go, the charge went where they needed it go, into the Cylon Raiders. The result was devastating. Not only were the Raiders active, the Cylons piloting them were holding their sticks and their feet were made of metal. 31 of the Raiders were destroyed outright. 7 spun out of control and were destroyed in collisions. Then the Vipers and Raptors powered up. All units, attack. 2 minutes later, all the Cylon Raiders were destroyed, and the Colonials headed towards the nearest base star. Magnus looked at the Dratty's display and cursed. There had been an explosion near Xanthi 1, and now the shuttle was spinning out of control. And it was only a matter of time before the base star would fire another wave of missiles. The survivors of the combat force were moving towards that base star, but their chances of making it there in time were slim. And Xanthi herself had her own problems. The second base star had managed to move around the field, and now she and Xanthi were exchanging fire. Magnus could feel the impact of the enemy missiles as they hit home. "Return fire, all main batteries," Mitchell yelled into the intercom. "Target the connecting section between the 2 discs. Helm, keep dodging. New course, 183 Karam 14, Magnus said. "Yes, sir." Miller said from the helm station. "Setting new course now, and we're rotating her 10 degrees on her y-axis now, sir." "Good." He flipped the 1 qubit coin. "Next, give me Z plus 2,000 meters in 5 minutes from my mark." He counted to 10 in his head. And mark. The clock began to count down. Now all he could do was hope that he had gotten the math right, or the plan in his head would blow up in his face. McIvers finally managed to break Xanthi one out of her spin. They were a lot closer to the base star now, which was a major problem. They were an easy target and out of swallows. "Okay, now what?" Williams began. "We're a sitting duck here." "Hang on, full speed ahead." McIvers opened the throttle all the way again, then he switched the activation unit to on. The countdown began, and now came the really nasty part: to escape before the nukes went off. But before they could do that, they had to deliver them first. So he kept pushing the engines while putting the shuttle through 4 wild turns. And then it came. "Incoming," Williams said. "5 missiles. Jam them." "I'm trying, but they're closing fast." McIvers threw the shuttle into another turn while bought them enough time to find the frequency of one of the missiles. It detonated 2 seconds later. 1 down, 4 to go. Distance? 6,000 clicks. 5, 4. McIvers knew it was time for desperate measures, so this time he threw the shuttle into a corkscrew. It was enough to mess up the guidance system on 2 of the missiles, just enough to make them collide. But the last 2 were closing fast. Williams desperately tried to find the frequency for the missiles. He managed to find one and detonate it at 500 meters. Then he said a quick prayer and waited for the end, but it didn't come. He looked at the Dratty's display and spotted another ship. It was a Markroman II Viper. "Thanks the Lords for the cavalry," McIvers said. 3 minutes and counting. Time for our escape, boss." They approached the base star in a straight line again now, the Viper stuck close to them, ready to provide cover fire. "How did that Viper get there before we were blasted to pieces?" "I don't know and I don't care," McIvers said. "Let's do this and worry about the rest later." They reached the base star and McIvers landed the shuttle on its hull. Then he activated the magnets usually used to secure the shuttle to deck. Next, he opened the inner airlock door. "Okay, time to go." "Right, boss." They entered the airlock and closed the door. McIvers looked at his watch. They were down to 2 minutes. The outer door opened and they began to run along the base star's hull. "We'll never make it," Williams said. "Don't worry, I have a plan." He looked at his watch. They were down to 1 minute. He knew the timing would have to be perfect. When they were down to 30 seconds, he made his move. He had not landed at a random point. The spot he had picked was near the Tillium tank, or where he suspected it was, and very close to a Raider launch tube. He threw Williams down the tube and dove after him. Then the nuke detonated. Leighton arrived just in time to see the explosion. It was a massive flash that was even brighter than Misery. When it died down, half of the enemy base star was gone. The other half was badly damaged. She could see several fires and large decompressed sections. She figured it was time to finish the job, so she activated her wireless. "All Vipers, open fire. All Raptors, head back to the barn now." The Vipers opened up, while the Raptors broke away. Leighton didn't waste any time joining the attack. Soon, whole chunks of the base star were exploding. Finally, somebody hit something vital, probably the FTL drive, and the whole thing went up in smoke. Leighton gave her next order. "Okay, folks, back to the barn." The Vipers began to turn away, but then Leighton noticed something. 2 emergency beacons were transmitting from somewhere inside the wreckage, and they were colonial. She turned her Viper around. "Tiger, I've got something impossible here. I need cover." "On my way, Ladykiller." Soon, Tiger's Viper came into view. Together, they moved towards the signals. It led towards a piece of Raider launch tube. The section was badly damaged. Leighton saw burns, twisted metal, and even impact craters. "In there," Tiger said. "I'm not liking this," Leighton said. "I'm not liking this at all. It could be a trap." "Hello," an unknown voice said. "We can hear you. Get us the frack out here. McIvers, is that you?" "No, it's your grandmother on a wooden raft. Of course it's me. Now get us out of here." "Stand by, I have to get a Raptor over here. Tiger, go to Channel 4. "Right, Channel 4. They switched over to Channel 4. "How much ammo do you have left, Tiger?" 22 rounds, boss." "Okay, I've got 40 rounds. You go get that Raptor. Hell, if you can, bring the whole barn." "You got it, boss." Tiger turned his Viper away from the section and pushed his thrust pedal for all he was worth. He had no intention of being away a second longer than he needed to. Leighton watched him go and hoped that there was somebody for him to bring back. Xanthi and the Battlestar were still exchanging punches. Magnus knew that so far, the Xanthi had the upper hand, but he also knew that it wouldn't last. According to the Galactica's report, it had taken everything she and Columbia could muster to damage the Battlestar. A normal Battlestar who have been torn to pieces under such heavy fire, which led Magnus to believe that this was no normal Battlestar. 30 seconds, Miller announced. Sir, they're trying to bring their lower batteries back online, Mitchell said. Time to finish this, Captain. 10 seconds, 5, and go. Xanthi moved up and then rotated on this axis until she was upside down. Of course, there was no such things in space, but nobody cared about that technicality. They needed to the main guns pointed at the Battlestar, and this move did that. Next, the ship pivoted to starboard and went to full sublight, and this was where the math came in. For when she had moved up, Xanthi had gone from the shadows of Hades to the realm of misery. The realm was the area of the northern gas cloud nearest to the star. It was also where the gas flowed the fastest. The key fact here was that Xanthi was moving downstream while the Battlestar was moving upstream. Magnus had done the math on how fast the two ships could move, and if he had gotten it wrong, this would end very badly of them. We're out of range of their lower battery now, sir, Mitchell said. DeSalle, ready tube 7 for launch. Yes, sir. DeSalle quickly ran through the pre-launch orders. Magnus looked at the Dratty's screen. They had passed the Battlestars and were now flying away from it. Of course, that didn't keep the gunners from putting down all the fire they could muster. DeSalle announced the tube was ready. Remove warhead and launch safeties. Safeties removed, sir. Release nuclear weapons is now authorized. Colonel, enter U authorization code. Yes, sir. Mitchell and Magnus quickly keyed in their codes. Mitchell took the launch key, put it in the proper slot, and turned it. 2 seconds later, the nuke launched. This time, they watched it as it went. Magnus sensed that everybody in CIC was holding his breath. Come on, Miller whispered. Come on. Hit already. And then the nuke hit home. It exploded, taking out the connecting section of the Battlestar. In less than a minute, the entire ship was gone. There were cheers from everybody. Mitchell called for quiet. Status of the repair star, Magnus said. We have. Mitchell began, but she didn't finish. For at that moment, the nukes aboard Xanthi 1 exploded. A kill, Xanthi 1, sir. They've done it. There were more cheers, and once again, Mitchell order quiet. Status of our fighters. We've got incoming Raptors, and the Vipers are engaging what is left of the repair star. Prepare the flight pods for incoming birds, Magnus said. Colonel, he lowered his voice, how bad is it? How many have we lost? Too many. He looked at the Dratty's display and took a deep breath. It was time to collect the butcher's bill. Battlestar Xanthi Commander's Quarters Day, 1508, 1706 hours. It had taken 2 days to clean up the mess of the battle. They were now setting up Ammo Station 12 as planned, but Magnus was worried. They were down to a handful of Vipers and Raptors, and they had lost a lot of good people in this battle. He took a deep breath and then got up from behind his desk. Magnus grabbed the intercom horn next to the desk. He activated it and called for McIvers and Leighton to report to his quarters. They showed up 5 minutes later. Have a seat, Magnus said. The 2 officers sat down on the large bench that came with the room. Magnus didn't waste any time getting to the point. As you both know, we suffered heavy losses during the battle, so we need new crew. The problem is that all the brass can give us is a load of nuggets. He paused. Which is why I'm promoting the 2 of you. He took 2 small boxes out of his desk drawer. Major Leighton, you're now our CAG. He gave her one of the boxes. Lieutenant McIvers will have to completely restaff Viper Squadron 2. I'm promoting you to full lieutenant and squadron leader. He gave McIvers the second box. Thank you, Commander. Sir, McIvers began. What about Ensign Williams and the shuttle squadron? The brass is sending a replacement for Xanthi 1. Junior Lieutenant Williams is going to be her new pilot with one of the Nuggets as his co-pilot. Yes, sir. He paused. Is there anything else, sir? There is one more thing, Magnus turned to Leighton. You're dismissed, Major. Yes, sir. Leighton said. She nodded and walked out while Magnus turned back to McIvers. Now, Lieutenant, we have a problem. He paused. You survived an exploding base star. And the Admiralty wants a crystal-clear answer on how you did that. Yes, sir. I understand, sir. Magnus sat down on the bench and took out a recorder, so take it from the top. He hit the record button. Okay, we had landed the shuttle on the hull. Chapter 5, Missing Links, or why it is not a good idea to be stuck on a Cylon base star you just glued a nuke to. Cylon base star, outer hull day, 1506. Time unknown. They were down to 30 seconds, but the Lords of Cabal were smiling down them. Because they were exactly where he had hoped they would be. It had taken him all of 90 seconds to come up with the plan, and it hinged on hope, a prayer or two, and the few things he remembered about Cylon's base stars. They reached the Raider launch tube and he pushed Williams inside, then entered himself. Keep running? We'll never make it, Williams said. Tyler, shut the frack up and run. They kept running. The clock reached 10 seconds and then something happened. One of the things that set base stars apart from Battlestar was the halfway pressure door. Battlestars had 2 pressure doors in their launch tubes, one at the very end of the tube and one in front of the Viper. But Cylon base stars had a 3rd door halfway down the tube. This model of base star had less launch tubes, and the 3rd door allowed them to load 2 Raiders in each tube. And when the clock reached 10 seconds, McIvers and Williams ran past it, which triggered an automated safety protocol and caused the door to slam shut. 2 seconds later, the door in front of them also slammed shut. Down, McIvers yelled. And hold on. They dove to the floor and grabbed the magnetic rail normally used to launch the Raiders, and then all hell broke loose. The explosion was a monster. It took out everything behind the door. Pure heat assaulted the door. It flashed into heat, which poured straight into the air around McIvers and Williams. The temperature in their suits skyrocketed. McIvers knew they couldn't take this for long. His vision became blurred, and then he passed out. Battlestar Xanthi Commander's Quarters Day, 1508, 1715. You passed out, Magnus said. You should have been vaporized in a split second. Yes, sir, we should have been. Then why weren't you? I don't know, sir. The only other thing I can remember is that, his eyes went wide. I didn't see the door close, sir. Because the tube was filled with nebular gas. Yes, Commander. That gas has a huge heat resistance. It takes a whole sun to heat it up. He paused. And if the coolant pipes next to the magnetic rail burst, the heat resistance would only get greater. So we basically survived because something on a Cylon base star broke down. Fan-fracking tastic. Magnus smiled. He didn't really care about how they had survived. He had only asked to please the Admiralty. He was simply happy that they had. Dismissed, Lieutenant. Yes, sir. McIvers got up, saluted and walked out. Battlestar Xanthi Duty Locker, 47 day, 1508, 1720 hours. Leighton walked into Duty Locker 47 and lay down on her bunk. Above her was Ensign Peter Aurelius. During the Battle of Hades and Misery, he had flown Viper 18. He had been the pilot who had covered Xanthi 1 on her final approach, which made Leighton wonder how he had gotten there in time. Oh, what the frack do I care? She got up and shook Aurelius. He opened his eyes and blinked. Pete, how'd you make to Xanthi 1 in time? What? He blinked again. What did you say? How did you make it to Xanthi 1 in time? You woke me for that Felgercarb question. Magnus made me CAG, Pete. Really? Aurelius was now fully awake. He made you CAG? Really? And that means I need to know for the paperwork. He swung his legs over the edge of the bunk and sat up. Okay, I was at the far edge of the formation. Aurelius had let go of the stick as ordered. He breathed calmly as he waited for the charge. Seconds seemed to stretch into minutes, but it came in the end. The charge ran through his ship. He looked out the window and saw it jump through the other Vipers and Raiders as well. Then it was gone. Once he had powered back up, he looked at the Draddy's display and saw that the Cylon fleet had been decimated and that his fellow pilots were attacking the survivors. But he also noticed something odd. A tiny dot on the edge of the screen. He turned his Viper in the proper direction and blasted away. When he got there, he couldn't believe what it was. A nuke. He shook his head. You've got to be kidding me. But it was indeed a nuke, and then he saw the markings. It was one of the 6 nukes Xanthi had launched. They had all missed the base star. And 5 of them had been blasted to pieces by the Cylons. But this one had survived long enough for the safety protocols to kick in. If a warhead missed after a while, it powered down and began transmitting a recovery signal, which was he had picked up. Okay, let's mark your. Then his Dratty's display beeped. It showed a shuttle spinning out of control. 2 seconds later, a base star came into range. Aurelius cursed under his breath. It was only a matter of time before the base star targeted the shuttle and blew it to pieces. And even at top speed, he couldn't make it in time to save her. Come on, Pete, think. There was to be, and then he realized he had found the solution already. He quickly keyed a code into his wireless control panel and hit the transmit button. The nuke responded instantly. I always thought these codes were rubbish until now. As part of their recovery programming, nukes were fitted with codes that allowed Vipers to access their systems. Aurelius quickly found the program he wanted. It allowed the Viper pilot to set coordinates for the missile to fly to. He set the program to fly the missile towards the base star. Now comes the hard part. He extended the landing gear. Let's do this, baby. He put his Viper above the missile, then turned on the magnets in his landing gear. The effect was exactly as he hoped. His Viper clamped itself to the missile. Okay, time to go. He opened the throttle all the way. Then he triggered the program. There was a massive burst of speed as the nuke's engine engaged. It pushed him back in his chair. Come on, come on, come on. After 57 seconds, the missile ran out of fuel. He turned the magnets off and pulled away. The missile reacted to the change in weight by changing course. It made a slow turn into Misery's gravity well. The star pulled it in and burned it out of existence. Viper 18, however, kept going. As he closed on the target, the shuttle broke out of her spin, and the base star fired a missile's salvo. And you know the rest, Aurelius said. You rode a missile, Leighton began. You're nuts. It's a crazy war, ma'am. You'll get no argument from me there. Congrats, Pete. You're a squadron leader as soon as we pick up our load of nuggets. Now get some sleep. That's an order. Yes, ma'am. She left Aurelius to get his shut-eye, but she knew she would not be able to get any of her own. So she headed for the pilot's ready room. She had a feeling there were tons of paperwork waiting for her.